our college let it go. Come be a strong and neutral band. For God and country, freely pledge we all. Led by the flag for which we stand. Look for the man that seeks the good and true. Red for our promise in the King. White for the glory of a heart that's pure. Bright with an ever shining place. Alma mater, we lucky the years and great success. With truth and love will conquer all. For God and land and as their friends. Alma mater, divine. God give the years and great success. With truth and love will conquer all. For God and land and as their friends. With truth and love, let us unite and be to our glorious college lead. High on the hill, a beacon light a sheep, leading our children on to pray. March on to glory is a message bold, spread through the love of far and wide. Loyal to the hands who reigns of guidance, teacher and pupil side by side. Alma mater, DBA, God give years and great success. With truth and love will conquer all. For God our land, let us celebrate. Alma mater, DBA, God give years and great success. With truth and love will conquer all. For God our land and let's celebrate.
Nandini?
Sir, shall I start?
Yes,
A very
Yes, ma'am.
pleasant
Please
morning
share.
to one and sorry, sir.
yes, you start.
A very pleasant morning to one and all present in this session today. I, Nandini Bodolu, welcome you all on the behalf of Management Principal Dr. K.T. Thomas, Sir, and staff of SFS College to this one-day national webinar on International Day of Democracy, organized by Sociology Department, SFS College. St. Francis de Sales College, popularly known as SFS College, established in the year 1956, is a Catholic Christian minority degree college situated at Seminary Hills, Nagpur, Maharashtra. The college offers different courses in the field of science and arts. It is affiliated to Rashtra Sant Tukdoji Maharaj Nagpur University. International Day of Democracy is celebrated on 15th of September all around the world every year. It was established through a resolution passed by United Nations General Assembly in the year 2007, and the first International Day of Democracy was observed in the year 2008. Our support for International Day of Democracy stems our core belief that democracy requires participation of all the citizens. To know more about it, we are privileged and honored to have Dr. Anjali Gaidhane, ma'am, with us today. Ma'am is an associate professor and head of Department of Political Science, Hislop College, Nagpur. Ma'am has total 25 years of teaching experience and holds doctoral degree from Rashtra Sant Tukdoji Maharaj Nagpur University and a postgraduate degree from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. As a resource person, ma'am delivered talks on at several places on wide-ranging topics of national and international significance, some of which are on Women's Day, on various legislation related to female feticide in India, on goal setting and career planning, and on governance, democracy, and education. Ma'am has received several awards and certificates of appreciation, one of which is from Daga Memorial Government Hospital for regularly organizing blood camps for poor thalassemia patients in collaboration with Maharashtra State Blood Transfusion Center every year. Ma'am has organized more than 125 co-curricular and extracurricular activities for students over the years. Once again, I warmly welcome you, ma'am. Before beginning this session further, it's a humble request to all the participants to mute their microphones and off their cameras. If anyone tries to disturb the session in between, would be removed from the session immediately. If you have any queries, you may post it in the chat box, and at the end of the session, we may take up your questions. I request you, ma'am, Anjali Gaidhane, ma'am, to please take over the session. Over to you, ma'am. Ma'am?
Okay. A very good morning to all of you. Am I audible to all of you? Can you all hear me?
Yes,
ma'am.
yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So a very good morning to all of you. It's a great honor, in fact, to be present here with you all this morning. And we are all together celebrating this World Democracy Day. At the outset, I would like to thank the principal of SFS College, Dr. Katie Thomas, sir, for being so forthcoming in organizing these seminars throughout the year. I have also attended a number of seminars, and I heartily congratulate sir for keeping this flag of academic discussions alive. I also thank and I also congratulate the Department of Sociology, Sachin sir, for taking the initiative in organizing the seminar. So let us start a discussion, and it's a great honor and privilege for me to be present amongst you all this morning. Okay, is my presentation visible to all of you? I just want to know before I start. Are the slides visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So now I'll go full screen. Just let me know if the whole slide is visible. Okay. So you all
It
can
is
see this.
visible, ma'am.
Ma'am, it's
So-
visible.
It's visible, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. So I also congratulate all of you, including me, all of us rather, that we are celebrating this International Day of Democracy that is celebrated on 15th September. And of course, the Department of Sociology for taking the initiative in organizing this seminar on International Day of Democracy. Now, before we start, just a understanding about why is this day celebrated, as the resource person the student just mentioned, that it's the United Nations passed a resolution through a consensus establishing this day as International Day of Democracy, and it's celebrated round the world on 15th September every year. And the basic idea behind celebration of this day is to encourage governments to strengthen and consolidate democracy. Now, this really is occasion to celebrate democracy, and we all of us can be, all of us can take great pride in the fact that we are citizens of a democratic country. It's a very big it's a very, very big gift to us that we are, it is, the credit goes to all our freedom fighters. It's because of them that today we are citizens of a great democratic nation. So why is democracy so important, and basically what is democracy? So today we will have a discussion on democracy, what's the concept of democracy, what are the dimensions of democracy, and what are the challenges that we as citizens together in India need to combat the challenges, so that we can have a better version or a reform version of democracy in this land. Okay, so at the outset, let's understand basically that what is a government. A government is basically an institution. Government is basically institution, and it includes certain procedures through which a territory and its people are ruled. So government is basically, in democracy, the beautiful thing is that it is the people create the government. Okay, and how do you decide what is the form or nature of government? It is decided on the basis of who governs, who is governing, and how much power is granted to the government. In the sense that if the power to the government is limited, it's limited government, then it's likely to be democracy. And who is governing? That is, are the people's elected representatives in the governing positions, or is it a government that is absurd? Hello, why is there so much disturbance? There is a lot of disturbance. I request all of you to switch on of your audios, please. Okay.
हेलो मलिन सर।
हेलो सर, मैं एक्चुअली ना वो जो डिस्टर्ब कर रहा था उसको रिमूव करने गया ना, तो पता नहीं वो अचानक से उसका स्क्रीन हटा और मैडम का स्क्रीन आ गया और वो गलती से रिमूव हो गए, तो उनको मैं कॉल करके बुला लेता हूँ।
जी जी। Dear participants, I request you not to leave this meeting. Man is going to join soon.
Hello, please mute your mic.
Participants are requested to please don't leave meeting. Ma'am is going to join soon. She is facing some technical problem. So I hope you understand. She is trying to join soon.
Okay. Good afternoon once again. After a lot of disturbance, finally, can you all hear my voice now? And
Yes, ma'am.
okay,
Yes, ma'am.
extremely sorry for all the disturbance and on the. I mean, sorry for not continuing the way we had started. But I think now we can get back, and I'll rather hurry up now because we have wasted quite some time. So I'll start from where we had left without further ado, because we already mm, late by time. Okay. Now, can you all see the screen once again? I just need to know these three things. That can you see the screen? Can you hear my voice?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, so I continue. So we were discussing, like, we need to understand what's the meaning of democracy. It's very important for us to understand the meaning of democracy. So the meaning of democracy is decided by the factor, or the government basically, who is decided by the factor who is governing and how much power is granted to the government. So if the government has limited authority, that is the beauty of democracy. In democracy, the government is not only elected by the people, that is, it's the people who give the power to the government, but also the fact that we have limited government. So there are a number of types of governments. Basically, it can be an autocracy where you have a single non-elected leader, oligarchy where, you know, the wealthy people, small group of wealthy people, but not accountable to the citizens, are in hold of power. And you may have a totalitarian government that absolutely recognizes no limits to their authority. It can be a dictatorship, you know, like we have had Saddam Hussein or Stalin, or or many communist countries, or a dictator, or totalitarian governments can also be in the form of military rule, as it exists in Myanmar, or, you know, it may be where the entire power is concentrated in single hand in a form of dictator or military or whatever. But the democratic system is by so far considered as the best form of government. See, it's not without demerits, it's not without disadvantages, but democracy by so far is considered as a best form of government, existing feasible form of government, because it allows the citizens to select their leaders. So in this form of government, it's the citizens that is selecting the leaders, and that makes this form of government the most successful and feasible form of government. Okay, so having understood that, let's just have a quick look at what are the features of democracy, what defines democracy. Now, basically, democracy is a system of interacting values, you know, which grants to its citizens personal liberty, that is freedom to the individual. It respects the individual for the individual that individual is, without any discrimination on the basis of race, color, caste, creed, wealth, or whatsoever. Okay, and similarly grants equality of opportunity to every citizen without any discrimination. Okay, so these values make democracy a very, very cherished form of government, because liberty, respect to the individual, equality of opportunity without any discrimination, you know. And the most important thing is, this form of government is based on popular consent. That is, it's based on the consent of the very people that the government is ruling through rules. So popular consent means consent of the people makes democracy very, very cherished form of government. Now, democracy is derived from two words. Demos means the people, and kratos means authority. And this makes democracy the government by the people. And we all know about the famous definition given by Abraham Lincoln of the people, by the people, for the people. Now, this people-centered democracy is people-centered, you know. And here in a democracy, it's the people who elect their government through free and fair elections. So free and fair elections are conducted, and the people, through exercising their right to vote, they elect the people, they elect the government based on majority. Whosoever will get the majority will form the government. And freedom of expression is guaranteed in this democracy. Moreover, there are several rights that are given in democracy. We'll have a brief look at the various rights that are given to us by the democracy. But then Prominent among them are freedom of expression, the right to assemble, the right to protest, the right to petition, so on and so forth. Okay. So basically, when we are trying to define democracy, we say that democracy is basically a system of interdependent political structures. Okay, it's based on federalism, separation of power, bicameralism, checks and balances, Bill of Rights. Now, because of the shortage of time, we will not be able to go through, will not go through all these concepts in detail. But what we can understand is basically that democracy is based on certain pillars. It's based on certain foundation, and those foundation or those basic values are liberty, equality, justice, and free media. So these we can say that these are the pillars of democracy. And these pillars of democracy guarantee to all its citizens equality of opportunity, freedom of thought and expression, justice. So every person has to can get justice under the system, and all this is ensured. The fourth pillar of democracy is considered as free media, because free media empowers the citizens. Okay, so these are the basic premises according to which democracy is governed. So these can also be considered as the merits of democracy. Like, it's based on rule of law. That is, according to law, everybody shall be. Nobody is above law, whether rich or poor, Raja ho ya rank, everybody is governed as per the law. It guarantees socio-economic justice. It also is a system that is very, very accountable, transparent, and efficient, because in this form of government, it's the citizens who participate actively in the entire process of governance. And to limit the power of the government, we have the check and balance system between the pillars of the government. And what are the pillars of the government? The executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. These executive, legislative, and judiciary is, it's also known as the principle of separation of power, or the organs of the government. So government functions through these organs. These organs help. These organs are kind of the foundation, and through these agencies, through these organs, the government exercises its functions, of course, with checks and balances. Checks and balances ensure that the government is acting within limits. So it has an inbuilt or a by default system wherein you can you have a system wherein the government's power will always be limited. So these are, then let's sum up the merits of democracy. That is, government based on the will and consent of the people. So this is the most important aspect of democracy, that it's a government that is having the consent of the people. It's based on consents of the people. People accept that government. And that is why government that is based on the consent of the people will obviously be sort of pledged to work for the welfare of the people. It automatically flows from that. Okay. Now the government, because it's based on the will of the consent of the people will constantly hold the government accountable for every act of omission and commission through its representatives, through an inbuilt system, and automatically the government will be forced to work for the welfare of the people. Okay, so this system of democracy is a system in which legally, indirectly, the government is responsible and accountable to the people. Okay, and the government also has to protect the rights of the various individuals. That is, all the individuals' social, political, economic rights have to be upheld by the government. Now, when we talk about democracy, we are talking, though I just had to sum up the lecture very, very fast because we have to also move on towards the challenges. But we have to understand that when we are talking about democracy, we in today's context are essentially talking about indirect form of democracy. Now, indirect democracy, because in indirect democracy, what we do is we elect as citizens, as through adult franchise, as citizens, we elect the leaders, we elect our representatives, and these representatives in turn are now going to make laws for us, hold the government accountable on our behalf. So the entire governance is going to be through the representatives. These representatives are elected by the people through voting. Now, this form is known as indirect democracy. And in most of the countries of the world today, because of the huge population and because of the fact that the size of the countries is also huge, it's not possible to have direct democracy. But do we have direct democracy still? Yes, we do have direct democracy in some cantons of Switzerland where the population is very small. And what happens in a direct democracy? In a direct democracy, basically, the people, if you can see on the screen, the people assemble in small squares, and the mayor would read out the agenda or the laws, and the people then raise hands and by majority accept or reject the laws. Okay, so this form of democracy is direct democracy. Now, obviously, direct democracy is not possible in large country like India, with billion of population. It's not possible to have direct democracy. We cannot, even in Hislop, I generally, while discussing in the class, I refer to the fact that even Hislop population is 8,000. So if we were to stand on the crossroad, even the Hislop population together, we cannot have direct democracy. Direct democracy is not even possible in Hislop, leave alone the city of Nagpur or the country as such. So basically, I hope you all have understood that when we talk about democracy, we are essentially referring to the indirect form of democracy. Direct form of democracy is not possible these days, though in Switzerland, they do have initiative, referendum, and recall through which they do have more involvement of the people in democracy. And in fact, Switzerland is considered such an ideal example of democracy. There are a lot of things we can take from Switzerland to have when we talk about reforms of democracy. If we want to really have some reforms from some positive changes in the democracy, we can borrow a great deal from Switzerland because their system is more transparent, more people-centered, and the people have more scope of participation in the system of governance as far as Switzerland is concerned. But then, of course, we can that can be a topic of discussion later. Coming back to what we were talking about is that the foundation of democracy is based on liberty, equality, justice, and of course the fourth pillar, the most important pillar, that is the free media. And all these four pillars are known as the structure, or they form the foundation, the basis of democracy, and that's why it's so cherished form of democracy. Now, having discussed the merits of democracy, and another important thing about democracy is, which is very, very important, that here you can change the government by peaceful methods. The change in the government is inbuilt in the system, wherein after 5 years, again, those who are holding power will come to you, and you will have to again you have the power to either accept them or reject them, and you can reject them, and you can you can change the government, the existing government, through a very peaceful, bloodless method. So no revolution, no bloodshed, no violence is required to change the government, because people automatically get a chance to elect the representatives of the choice automatically after every 5 years. Okay, so this is very, very important, because otherwise in a dictatorial or a tyrannical or a totalitarian form of government, यदि सरकार बदलनी है, if you have to change the government, you essentially either have to revolt, there is violence, there is bloodshed, there are a lot of deaths, and even at the top of it, you never know whether you will be able to change the government, or the government by force will be able to resist that change and will be able to crush that revolution, as it happened in Myanmar, or as it happened. So it's not, here democracy is so important for this reason, that you automatically, you can, if the change is desired, after 5 years, you can have a very smooth change by peaceful method. Okay, so this is very, very important. And here, in a democratic form of government, there is a very direct relationship between the citizens and the government. They are not delinked, they are not derailed. Okay, so this is the beauty of democracy. But of course, democracy, though is a very cherished form of government, it's not without disadvantages or demerits. So we also need to just take a look at what are the demerits of democracy. It's very costly and expensive government. Elections are a costly affair. Crores and crores rupees are spent in conducting the election. So though you do get a change through peaceful method, but it's not at at absolutely no cost. It's very costly and very expensive, and the whole process of election itself can be a topic of discussion. That when these elections are conducted, we have so many issues associated with elections. As common citizens, we are so much aware of it. Citizens know that when the elections are conducted, there's so much corruption and the political parties, then lobbying, and all that goes, criminalization of politics, all that goes into conducting elections. So though elections as it is, and the method of electing the government through election is very peaceful method, lot of things do happen in that process itself. So it's costly and expensive. At the same time, it's not without faults, that the way elections are conducted also need a lot of changes or reforms, because lots and lots of money is spent, lot of lobbying, and many things happen therein. Then secondly, in a democracy, basically we generally talk about two types of democracy. One is the procedural democracy and the other is substantive democracy. So basically, though the people are throughout involved, mostly what happens is कि भाई जब 5 साल में elections होते हैं तभी हमको हमारे politicians दिखते हैं, MPs का चेहरा या MLAs का चेहरा we only get to see, or even 5 साल में भी नहीं दिखता. So we either get to see or we don't get to see at all. So basically, people are disconnected with the whole system. So though we say कि connection है and all that, but mostly इतनी बड़ी population में government keeps on functioning at its own pace and at its own convenience, and we are sort of mostly indifferent to what the government is doing. So though we talk about we do vote, or we even take our right to vote so casually. So that makes that is one of the severe deficiencies or defects of democracy, that indifferent attitude of the people, and at times the government may be also indifferent and not really concerned about the welfare. It may be more interested in corruption, or it may be more interested in its own selfish motives. Okay, so what actually happens in a democracy, in spite of having such a foundational level having such a system in place, is many a times it becomes the dictatorship of the rich and the moneyed, because only the rich can contest the elections, only the rich get elected through money power, through muscle power, and ultimately it becomes the dictatorship of the rich and the money. And not all the time it's government of the people, by the people, for the people, but it may deviate or get derailed into government of the people, not OF but OFF, of the people, by the people, BUY, where you purchase the voters, so you purchase the entire system. So BUY, not BY, and for the people instead of FOR, for the people. It's far away from the people. There is no connection between the government and the people. So these are also the demerits of democracy. And moreover, one of the demerit is that while we talk about democracy, there are basically 3 dimensions of democracy: the political democracy, social democracy, and economic democracy. So mostly political democracy would mean wherein you are exercising your political rights, like right to vote, all these rights, and contest elections. So in, say, for example, if you're talking in the Indian context, the political dimensions is well assured through adult franchise, universal adult franchise. And this is one beautiful right we got after independence. This is very, very important right, because prior to independence, adult franchise or universal adult franchise was not in existence. Only 15% of the population that was wealthy, that was propertied, and that was educated could exercise their right to vote. So now, after independence, now we have added this political dimension wherein all the adult citizens can exercise their right to vote. So this is sort of done. That is, we are securing the political dimension of democracy, which is a good news because all the citizens now can participate in the election. But what is lacking is the social and economic aspect of democracy. And why is that? That the reason is that the social life, the social rights, like, the personal freedom, right to property, right to education, right to equality before law, all these rights that come through social rights, and all the economic rights through the economic dimensions, wherein economic opportunities to one and all, these are still not in existence in the Indian democracy. The reason is because of the socio-economic inequality that exists in India. So till we are able to secure that socio-economic equality, till we have a decent standard of living for all the citizens, we are not going to be true democracy, for the simple reason that while we have managed to secure the political dimension, the procedural dimension, the procedural democracy is there. We are having elections after every 5 years, free and fair elections after 5 years. We have institutions in place. That's all done. So that for that we need to congratulate ourselves, because we have secured that much. The procedural success is of course there for Indian democracy. We have secured that procedural aspect where every 5 years elections are conducted in a free and fair manner. Every 5 years citizens get an opportunity to vote and to change the government and to elect the representatives of their choice and all that. Yes, that while it's in place, the socio-economic dimension, socio-economic aspect is not secured of democracy, for the simple reason that we do not have socio-economic equality. As a result of this, because we have socio-economic inequality in our country, what happens is the rights of the poor, the underprivileged, the subalterns of the society, their right to food, to health, to housing, to work, to profession, they are denied these opportunities on an equal basis. So we need to secure this dimension. So in order to have a true democracy, in order to have substantive democracy, the substantive democracy is the democracy that is fulfilling the welfare of all the citizens of the country without any discrimination on the basis of religion, race, caste, gender, or place of birth. So this dimension also needs to be secured. So this aspect is definitely missing, or we need to work on this aspect, because for democracy to be successful, there are preconditions for democracy. So they are known as democracy cannot be successful if you do not have the environment within which democracy can be truly successful. And that environment would mean that the socio-economic standard of living has to be a basic socio-economic standard of living has to be ensured. But being a problem, the socio-economic dimension of democracy is not being fulfilled. So let us take an overview of this. If we are to have a critical evaluation, in fact, in India, we have a very ancient tradition wherein we had this. So Indian democracy is not new to us, to be very, very frank. We had this tradition within our country. We had these ancient sabhas and samitis and a very sophisticated procedure wherein the elected kingships, the republics, they used to function on a democratic basis. So we had the system in place, the janapadas, the village panchayats, the gram sabhas, the gram sanghas, So in fact, India may be said to be the cradle or the home of democracy in the past. And in fact, we also can be given the credit of giving these democratic ideals to the rest of the world. Okay, so we have a very ancient tradition of democratic culture. We have had this. But then, of course, the modern democracy we have, of course, created after independence. We have adopted the modern concepts and the structural patterns of democracy as it existed in the West during the 19th century. And on that pattern, we have evolved our democracy. So if we were to start about the evaluation of Indian democracy, we can say, we can be very, very proud of this fact that India has been a very successful democratic country. Why very successful democratic country? Because India is one of the few countries in Asian, African and Latin American countries who, in spite of colonial history, could still have elections after 5 years. You see, democracy did not survive in all the countries that adopted democracy after becoming free from the colonial rule. Many countries of Asia, Africa, Latin America, they adopted democracy, but democracy in those countries failed and dashed and crashed miserably. It could not become successful. But India, we can pat our backs. We can be very proud of the fact that in India, after every 5 years, elections are conducted. Every 5 years, people elect their representatives to the Lok Sabha, and we have a system in place, a government in place that is answerable collectively to the group of ministers who are our representatives that we have chosen. Then we have the Supreme Court of India, that is the guardian of fundamental rights, protecting the rights of the citizens. We have a written constitution, the lengthiest constitution in the whole world, that guarantees right to equality with no discrimination on the basis of any grounds, religion, language, caste, gender, whatsoever. So we have, and moreover, we can also be very proud of the fact that in India, the president or the prime minister can come from any background, need not be heredity through succession. It can be, he or she can be rich, poor, to belong to any religion, caste, or any gender or birth. So that's not a criteria for discrimination. So we have a lot of credentials. We can be very proud of these facts. We can be very proud of the fact that every year, India being the largest democracy in the whole world, 900 million eligible voters vote, and we have a procedure in place where they can go and vote. Can you imagine so many people? You have a whole system in place where so many people are actually going and voting, and we are conducting that whole process so smoothly. I mean, it's a miracle. We can be very, very proud of the fact that it's a miracle wherein we conduct these elections. So many people actually voting. Okay, by the way, I'm going am I going very, very fast, and can you all hear me properly?
Yes, ma'am. Your
Yes, ma'am.
voice is clear and
Okay, thank you. So, okay,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
thank you.
Voice is clear, ma'am.
Thank you. So this is the greatest miracle in the whole world. We, so many people, 900 million people, actually going and exercising their right to vote, and we elect through these elections. We create a system of government, that is, we elect our representatives, and through these representatives, we have a government in place, and through this, we actually are, we can proudly call ourselves one of the most successful, largest democracy in the whole world, which is fantastic achievement. I must tell you, it's in fact a fantastic achievement. So many people in the West are amazed at how India does such a massive exercise after every 5 years. Clement Italy has actually gone on record and told that India is a powerhouse. India is guiding the whole world as to how you can actually conduct these elections the way India does. So we can be very proud of this fact. But now we also need to understand what are the challenges that India faces. What are the challenges to democracy? And it's very important that we understand these challenges, because only when we understand the challenges that Indian democracy is facing, we can think about mechanisms to redress those or rectify those challenges, right? So basically, if we have to take an overview of the challenges to democracy, these are the challenges to democracy. political violence during elections, illiteracy, criminalization of politics, corruption, regionalism, religious fundamentalism, communalism, casteism, gender discrimination, poverty, economic inequality, social inequality. And these together, along with the very, very recent phenomena in which these days, when we talk about the freedom of speech and expression, but this freedom of speech and expression is also shrinking, the civic space is shrinking, and that is also a matter of concern. So just let us have a brief overview or look at the problems that India is facing and what can be the possible solutions to those problems. So basically, poverty in India is a big problem. So poverty, that is basically, uh, you know, related. The poverty is so bad in this country, and here we can obviously blame the Britishers. The Britishers systematically plundered India through their taxes, through their tariffs, and a very, very systematic policy of exploitation. And they converted this land of honey and gold into a land of poverty, illiteracy, and starvation. And it was very, very systematic policy of exploitation. They were very sure what they wanted to do, because India, as Shashi Tharoor has brought to our knowledge, that India was a land that used to export 27%. It had a share of 27% of world trade. Can you believe it? 27% of world trade. Our cloths, malmal and all, were worn by the Roman. The entire Europe used to wear clothes that were made or manufactured in India. Our weavers were the best in the world, and our cloth, textile trade, so much, we had so much to give to the world. But then when Britishers, because they went through this industrial revolution, and they wanted to dump their machine made goods, what they did was they did not allow the imports of Indian textile onto the land. They imposed heavy taxes, and they stopped, or rather they systematically damaged the entire textile and weaving and manufacturing industry of India. The weavers had no place to go. The entire place was on the entire burden was on agriculture, so there was no agricultural development. In agriculture also, through the feudal laws and through zamindari system, they exploited the farmers, and they deliberately crushed the entire agricultural development. So agriculturally, industrially, economically, we were just doomed. The exploitation was so big that they actually crushed the total damage that was done. As this Utsa Patnaik, who has done extensive research on the whole thing, she talks about the fact, talked about this relationship between the British Raj and the economic drain. So Dadabhai's economic drain theory, and she has brought to our record that the British Raj siphoned $45 trillion from India. So that was the level of exploitation. So now we need not know what are the causes of poverty. Of course, in fact, then we can say, yeah, we know what are the causes of poverty. If there was so much economic drain, if the drain was so large, obviously we have then come quite far, in the sense that we have really solved the problems of starvation and impoverishment. And of course, this was coupled at the time by the problem of partition, when millions and millions were killed. And the partition also was a heavy blow to the already overburdened Indian economy. So we know the causes of poverty, starvation, and so forth. And so we also at the same time know that after poverty, we also were grappled with the problem. So when the government was in place, when India was on its task of nation building, when we were trying to evolve our own model of development and all that, we were also saddled with the problem of corruption. That is, corruption by the political leaders. That is, power colonial rule se to nikal gaya, wahan se to managed, because the freedom struggle, we sort of gave the power to the government, to the Indian people. But then yahan pe power aane ke baad, what was the outcome, what was the result? That it was riddled with the problem of corruption. And corruption is something that if you can see the picture, it's very, very obvious कि corruption क्या है. I need not give you a technical definition of corruption. Corruption से सिर्फ आम आदमी का खून चूसना, that process is corruption. So the politicians, exactly through the corruption, they are exactly doing. They are just sucking common man's blood. So this problem is like जिसे कहते हैं ना, दीमक लग जाती है. It's like a दीमक. You have to, यदि पूरे दीमक किसी किताब को लग जाए या किसी अलमारी को लग जाए तो वो पूरी तरह से वो सिस्टम को खोखला कर देती. So corruption is basically like दीमक. And in fact, if you have to remove that problem, the only solution is good governance. Now we'll of course talk about good governance, because good governance is the only solution. It's kind of a paste through which you can remove this dimak. That is, good governance is something that ensures that the government that is supposed to do the job it is supposed to do is doing it responsibly and the way it is supposed to do it. So good governance is the only solution to corruption, to poverty. But at the same time, it doesn't stop here, because we also have something like criminalization of politics. And criminalization of politics is a menace to our country. And what is criminalization of politics? कि politicians जो हैं, जिनको हम representative government कहते हैं, जिनको अभी हम इतना proudly कह रहे थे कि in India after years of struggle, you know, before 1909 there was not even a single Indian in the representative government. The entire power was concentrated in the hands of the Britishers, and they were exploiting and sucking this land to the fullest. But after a massive struggle, 1909, 1919, Montego reform, Morley Minto reform, and all these, by the time we managed to secure representation of Indians in the British administration, little by little. Obviously they were very, very stingy about it. They just didn't want to let go powers in their hands because they wanted to exploit more and more. But after a lot of struggle, finally in 1947, when we managed through our independence, when the entire power was in the hands of the Indians, the representatives elected by the people, what these representatives were doing, they were ruling the nation through criminal activities. So all the politicians, you will be surprised to know, criminalization of politics, if I need to explain you, is that जो representatives, जो politicians हम चुन के देते हैं सरकार में, सरकार चलाने के लिए, वो basically criminals होते हैं. And this criminalization of politics is worse than actual dacoits and actual luteras, because जिनको हमने, जैसे हमने एक आधा चौकीदार रखा है चौकीदारी करने के लिए तिजोरी की, और वो चौकीदार ही चोर निकले, तो क्या होगा? हमारा पूरा खजाना खाली हो जाएगा. In the similar manner, criminalization of politics is such a menace to the country that those people we entrusted the job of securing and protecting our lives are basically looting us. So Britishers तो ठीक है, foreigners ही थे, बाहर के ही थे, लेकिन यहाँ पे प्रॉब्लम क्या है कि हमने रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स चुन के दिए, हमने सरकार बना के दी, हमारे लोगों में से हमारी सरकार बनी, और यही लोग लुटेरे निकले. So this is what is criminalization of politics, which is so dangerous, so disastrous for this delicate democratic setting of our country. Very, very problematic. If you were just to see the statistics, the state-wise percentage share of the MPs facing criminal charges, you have this record. You know, Uttar Pradesh, 54% of the politicians, the ministers, are criminals. Maharashtra is no better, 16%. You know, Bihar 11%, others 19%. So you have these many criminals as politicians. यानी 554 में से 226 पॉलिटिशियंस जिनको हमने रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स करके इलेक्शन से चुन के दिया, इतना खर्चा करके इलेक्शंस करवाया, उनको इतनी मेहनत से चुन के दिया, व्हाट आर दे आर क्रिमिनल्स. सो व्हाट आर दे डूइंग फॉर 5 years? व्हाट आर दे गोइंग टू डू? उनको पावर तो इंटरेस्ट कर दिया हमने, रादर दे आर गोइंग टू डू मोर डैमेज देन द ऑर्डिनरी क्रिमिनल्स ऑफ द लैंड. ऑर्डिनरी क्रिमिनल्स को तो एटलीस्ट इतना ज्यादा, एटलीस्ट यू हैव अ सिस्टम, लेकिन जिनको हमने, जैसे मैंने कहा कि चौकीदार ही यदि चोर निकले, सो दैट कैन बी a very, very dangerous thing, and that's exactly happening on land. And when the Supreme Court was shocked to see the statistics, and it said that this alarming increase in the incidence of criminals in the politics, which is basically criminalization of politics, is so bad. So we really need to take stock of this. Now, this criminalization of politics cannot be arrested by merely disqualifying the legislators or the politicians, but we will have to cleanse the entire system. तो फिर दीमक जो है वो नीचे से system में ही लग गई है, and that is really a matter of concern. Okay, now with all these problems, another problem facing the youths is unemployment, because यहाँ पे criminalization of politics है, bad governance है, corruption है, तो उसकी वजह से सारे ये problems कोई एक single problem नहीं होता है. All the problems are interrelated. So coupled with that, we have the problem of unemployment. Unemployment is also a problem because we have this problem of overpopulation. India is a very, very ancient land, and because of being very, very ancient, we also have this problem of overpopulation. But mind it here, population is not always a problem. Population in fact can be a asset to any country if we are on the path of nation building. We can convert this into an asset. It's a human resource. जैसे resources होते हैं, natural resources होते हैं, water bodies, trees, plants, forests, ये जैसे एक asset होता है, वैसे ही population can become a big asset provided we have good governance, provided we have a mechanism to convert this populate into a literate, skilled, responsible asset for the nation. But then we have to ensure that this population is not a liability but an asset for the nation, and we can do it through a proper mechanism in place, through a very systematic approach to this. We can convert this population into an asset. So India can become a big superpower, not in terms of military and this, but superpower in terms of the population, if our population can be converted into a trained, skilled, responsible, educated citizenry. And that is possible through good governance. But then the problem doesn't stop with this. Another problem is democracy demands equality as far as every aspect is concerned. But in India, we have massive gender inequality. Now, this aspect is again a matter of concern because you are having a problem in the representation of the population. While we are saying that 50% of the population is women, we see that this population is not equitably or equally represented in the parliament, neither in the parliament nor in the legislative assembly. So what is the representation of women in the assembly? In the parliament, it's merely 11%. Even the neighboring countries of Pakistan, China, Nepal, they have better representation of women. 17th Lok Sabha just saw 66 female MPs out of 543, constituting merely 12.15% of the strength. So what a massive gender gap. Now, when we look at the statistics, only 1 in 5 parliamentarians is women. Now, a question here is, what's the problem? If we have a gender gap, if we do not have equitable participation of women, it's okay. It's a patriarchal world. Let men do the job of decision making. Let women remain absent. Let women take care of their homes and herds and child rearing and childbearing. Why do you need representation of women? Why is it important? The problem is that this gender inequality is a greatest crisis that can be it can be the greatest threat for democratic fabric. Your country, is not representative of the diversity, be in terms of gender or be in terms of religion or being in terms of caste or creed. If your government is not diverse, if it's not representing women, it means you are trying to fly on a single wing. एक पंछी, एक पक्षी जैसे एक पंख पर उड़ने की कोशिश करे तो वो उड़ सकता है क्या? नहीं ना. Similarly, what we are trying to achieve through this gender inequality is we are trying to fly on one wing. हमारे दोनों पंख सक्षम होने चाहिए. We need empowered men, we need empowered women. Both have to take on the equal responsibility of development. If we are not achieving that, if women are not made equal partners in the process of development, we will be never able to grow as a nation. It will be an extremely lopsided, extremely deficient, extremely ill, or rather diseased democracy. Democracy can never become complete until unless we have equal partnership of women. So this problem is very, very important. We need to have a look at that. Then problem of communalism, where you have the religion and politics in the same hand. And India, why do you have this problem of religion and politics or communalism? What is communalism? Where religion and politics join hand together, and the politicians use this religion to manipulate the masses. So this problem is the problem because religion and politics, when they join hand together, the politicians use the religious sentiment to create hatred, to create violence, to we have bloodshed, riots, and this is very, very disastrous for the nation. So along with communalism, we also have a problem of basically, to understand this communalism, we have to understand that there is a difference between communalism and religious pluralism. It's very beautiful to have various religions on this land. India is basically a multi-religious, multicultural, diverse nation, and this is the beauty of Indian democracy. The religious pluralism is basically the beauty of Indian democracy. We have this unique blend where so many people of various cultures and diverse fraternity, we coexist, and this entire diversity is absorbed and assimilated in the democratic fabric and culture of the masses. But when this religious diversity is used by the politician to create hate, to create violence, to create enmity of one against the other, it becomes a huge problem. So this communalism is religious exploitation of the sentiments of the people for political gains. This is basically manipulating the Indian people. Okay, so this is a huge problem. Then of course, basically this communalism can be traced back to the spark ignited by the British, because they ensured that the policy of divide and rule, and through many policies they ensured that we were a torn land, we were a divided land. Now how to deal with it? Again, it's basically the solution to this. We need to understand how to deal with this. Along with this, it's just not that. We have the problem of casteism, caste-based violence. Now we don't have the time to go into the details of what is caste, and you are all the students of sociology will definitely know better. But problem is that a section of the society faces discrimination, lynching, and all these violence against Dalits, which is a very big stigma on our democracy. Along with that, we also have the problem of linguism. Linguism means where language, linguism is a problem. It becomes a problem when you have excess attachment to your language. Otherwise, language is a beautiful thing. We have all these languages in the constitution. We have, and the language is one thing that binds us. But language becomes a problem when, because of linguism, you have agitations. Because of linguism, you have revolutions. You have reorganization of the states based on violence. There's nothing wrong in reorganization of the state, but it's based on violence, bloodshed, and lot of hatred of one language against the other. Otherwise, language or linguistic diversity is a beautiful thing. Language is very important for nation building. India can take great pride that we have more than 3,000 languages. After every 300 kilometers, language changes. So language is a strong bond for emotional unity. We do share the same language can create a common bond, but this doesn't mean that we start hating or we develop animosity towards others who speak different languages. So this goes against the culture of linguistic diversity. So we need to accommodate this element also. Along with that, we have the problem of regionalism. And this problem of regionalism has been responsible for, violence in Jammu and Kashmir, Gujarat, Maharashtra, and many states that were created. They also faced a lot of violence. So regionalism, and again, regional diversity breeds hatred, and that becomes a problem. You consider the others as outsiders, and this leads to a number of violence. Okay, and there are many causes to it, but we won't go into that as of now. But just to sum it up, all these are basically challenges because these are obstacles to national integration. Casteism, regionalism, communalism, linguism, all these are a threat to national integration. Instead of uniting, instead of growing together, instead of nation building, they take us back. In fact, they damage, they destroy, they do untold, they crush everything that they crush our dreams basically. So that's why it's such a big problem. So how do we combat all these problems, all the problems that we just discussed? How do you think can we combat this problem? Basically, we will have to remind ourselves on this occasion of International Day of Democracy. We'll have to remind ourselves that whatever diversity we are coming from, whatever religion, whatever language, whatever region we are from, we are Indians first and Indians last. And we owe everything to this land, to this beautiful land. And in fact, it's we who are going to nurture this tree of democracy. So whatever my caste is, I may be a Hindu, Jain, Buddhist, Sikh, Islamic, or Christian, as my religion is concerned. If you just draw that, if you can see the slide, we are all Indians. We need to remind this ourselves every day, that all these animosity, hatred is useless, because we are bound by this beautiful bond of being Indians, and we have this responsibility of growing together, of making this land, this culture, a very beautiful land where everybody can peacefully coexist. So we have to be responsible, we have to be sensitive, we have to be aware, we need to be vigilant. So if you have to really preserve the democratic fabric of this land, we have to be vigilant. We have to address this issue. Again, I can congratulate the Department of Sociology, because it's though we all know these things, it's not something that I'm telling you new, but we as citizens need to be constantly reminded of our responsibilities, that ultimately the positive democratic culture in our society, or the bright future for democracy in our country, can only be secured when I am playing my role that I'm supposed to play. So the future of democracy is in our hands. It's in your hands, it's in my hands. India is the largest democracy of this country, and we can in fact be a guiding light, a role model for the entire world. We can lead the entire world. We have led the entire world on the cherished values and ideals of Mahatma Gandhi and Swami Vivekanand, who have been showing the world that its whole world is basically about peaceful coexistence. You cannot win the world by war or guns. You can only win, or you can only survive by peace, love, and by being united together in this bond of humanity. So it's basically, we have to understand this. We'll have to remind ourselves that, am I exercising my right to vote? And why is it this important? Because if I want better India, if I have to combat these challenges, it's only by exercising my right to vote. It's only by creating worthy, responsible politicians, by electing responsible politicians, and I, as citizen, being vigilant citizen, responsible citizen, can I make this democracy survive. And why do I want to make this democracy survive? Because it's for my good. My life will be good only when democracy is good. So good health of democracy is ultimately going to help me and my family members live a good life. So if we all need to live a good life, if we all need to live a secure life, a very, very secured life, a protected life, a life of harmony, a life of cooperation, life of growth, only democracy is the answer. You know, as I was telling you, by far, the only hope, the only light is democracy. It's by far the most successful political idea in the world, but it requires lot of inputs. What is the nature of input? It requires work from us. I won't go into the details, but because again, the time, we lost a lot of time in the basic uh, thing. So I'll just tell you, but basically there are a number of measures that can be taken to improve and reform democracy. The most important is educated and vigilant citizens. Educated, vigilant citizens are who are on the vigil, who are aware, who are keeping a watch. They are not indifferent. Arey, jo kuch chal raha hai, chalne do. How does it matter? Really does it matter if I obey the laws? Let others obey the law. I'll rather, walk away. So unko karne do. I'll rather just ensure that mera sab kuch secure hai. So we forget that mera secure tab tak nahi hoga jab tak sabka secure nahi hai. Because we are all in the same boat. नो सो यदि बोट में हम लोग सब हैं और बोट में ही छेद हो जाए तो उसका सफरिंग विक्टिम्स हम सभी होंगे. तो ऐसा नहीं हो सकता कि बाकी सबको मरने दो, आई विल जस्ट टेक केयर ऑफ माई सेल्फ. इट डजंट हैपन दिस सच वे. No, so how do we combat? What we need to do is we have to be very, very vigilant. We have to be sensitive, we have to be aware, we have to address this issue time and again. So as Plato said, that a good state is not made up of rocks and mountains, but of the citizens who compose it. So ultimate responsibility of democracy is nowhere, it's within us. We have to ensure the success of democracy, because ultimately bad officials are the ones elected by good citizens who do not vote. If I'm not exercising my right to vote, I'm doing already a lot of damage to my democracy and to myself and to the whole of the country, to whole of the citizens of the country. So basically, if I have to have India of my dreams, if I have to ensure that this beautiful country, beautiful land, as Ravindranath Tagore said, that the land where mind is without fear and the head is held high, where the knowledge is free, this land that I have been dreaming about is only possible, only and only possible, if I take the responsibility on myself. And the solution to this is that, we have to bind our diversity in this beautiful thread of unity. United we stand, divided we fall. So we have to, have that feeling of fraternity, of bonding, of harmony with one another. As Mahatma Gandhi so beautifully put it, our ability to reach unity in diversity will be the beauty and test of our civilization. So to the question that will be able to sustain this democracy, will be able to, grow ahead and go ahead with this whole concept of democracy? Is it possible? The answer to this question is yes, provided we are able to reach unity in diversity. If we are able to understand that this beauty of unity in diversity, that if we are able to understand that, then we will definitely be very, very successful in ensuring a very beautiful land of my dreams, of your dreams, of our dreams. Because the whole foundation of democracy is based on our culture. It's not I and you as distinct from one another. It's like our thing. The whole democracy, the preservation of the democratic culture, achievement of democratic dreams, everything is only possible if we are able to stand united amongst these diversities, amidst these challenges that we face. So with this, I sort of conclude this lecture, and I thank you all for giving such a patient hearing. For, in spite of so many obstacles that we faced, we still could continue this. At one point of time, I thought maybe we'll not be able to, have this today's lecture. But thank you for joining me, and thank you all, the entire audience. Thank you once again.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
First of all, I would like to apologize for the delay and the technical problem that we have faced. But I think the time we have utilized, the time you have given, that is very precious, and I'm really thankful to you, ma'am, for the wonderful presentation. Even I think when we will read all the books, I think 2, 3 books, but we will not get these many information and in detail knowledge about the democracy. The way you explain all the topic and all the concepts very clearly, I think there is no doubt in the minds of participants. That is why I see there is no question from the participant side. You have also mentioned the meaning of democracy, direct and indirect democracy, the challenges and the problems that our country is facing. So very beautiful presentation, ma'am. I really missed that opportunity. I have not got opportunity to be a student of yours, but at least I could attend your presentation, and I got to know so many things that was not clear earlier. Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you so much. Thank you so much. This feedback was so much of value to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. And as you said that we need to consider whenever we are going to cast our vote, we need to think about our nation first, rather
Yes.
than which caste, which religion, or from where we are. We
Yes.
need to ignore that. And as you said, that power comes with the responsibility. If we are getting the power to vote, we have to be very responsible.
Yes.
And
Yes. Absolutely.
I really appreciate, ma'am, your presentation. Very beautiful presentation. And I would like to thank Dr. K.P. Thomas, sir, Principal, SFS College, and all the technical team like Biju, sir, who has given me a team like Mervin, sir, Itika, ma'am, Sejal, Pinky, ma'am, Reshma, ma'am. I'm thankful to all of them and all the participants who patiently hearing the presentation. And last but not the least, today's anchor, Miss Nandini Bodule. Thank you, Nandini, also. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
I
Thank you.
conclude here. The presentation and seminar is over here. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Even I would want to appreciate the entire technical support for so much cooperation, and Sachin sir, Department of Sociology, our Principal of SFS College, Katie Thomas, for giving me this opportunity. It was my honor, my pleasure, my privilege, and I really enjoyed being with you all. Thank you once
Thank
again.
you. Thank you.